Observer Kelrath's compound eyes scanned the data streams for the third time that cycle. Something was wrong. The numbers made no sense according to everything the Galactic Council knew about species development. The planet Terra, located in a quiet arm of the galaxy, had been under passive observation for 12,000 rotations. The Council's automated systems tracked hundreds of primitive worlds, waiting for them to reach the proper stage of development before making contact. Terra was catalogued as Level 2.3, a species that had discovered basic chemistry and crude mechanical tools. They were at least 500 rotations away from achieving spaceflight, except the sensors now showed a permanent structure on Terra's moon. Kelrath adjusted his observation equipment with 3 of his 6 limbs, while the others worked on verification protocols. He had served the Council for 43 cycles, and in all that time, he had never seen an error this large in the monitoring system. The primitive Terrans couldn't possibly have reached their moon. They still used controlled chemical explosions for propulsion. Explosions. The very idea made his thorax shudder. System, run full diagnostic. Kelrath clicked in his native language. The translation matrix hummed as it processed his command. The response came back clean. No errors, no malfunction. The readings were accurate. Kelrath felt the strange sensation his species called dread. If the readings were accurate, something unprecedented had occurred. He initiated a priority communication to the Council headquarters, a massive station that orbited the galactic core. 3 rotations later, Senior Counselor Veshkara appeared in holographic form. Her energy-based species flickered with patterns that Kelrath's translator rendered as mild annoyance. Observer Kelrath, your report claims a Level 2.3 civilization has achieved lunar colonization. This is clearly a sensor malfunction. Recalibrate your equipment. Honored Counselor, I have run 17 full diagnostics. All systems function within normal parameters. I request permission to conduct a close observation. The hologram pulsed red. Close observation of a pre-contact world? Absolutely not. The contamination protocols will be strictly observed, Kelrath interrupted, which was incredibly rude by Council standards. But his scientific curiosity had overwhelmed his manners. I will maintain full stealth protocols. If this is genuine, the Council needs to know how it happened. Veshkara's colors shifted to contemplative blue. Very well. But Kelrath, if you're wasting Council resources on an equipment failure, it will reflect poorly in your next evaluation. The hologram vanished before Kelrath could respond. 5 rotations later, Kelrath's stealth observation ship hung in Terra's orbital space, hidden behind advanced refraction fields that bent light around his vessel. His instruments could now see the lunar structure clearly. It was real. Shockingly, impossibly real. The structure was crude by Council standards. It looked like metal cans connected together with basic airlock seals. Solar panels extended from the structure at odd angles, clearly added after the initial construction. The whole thing looked like it might fall apart if someone breathed on it wrong. But it was there. It was functioning. And through his sensors, Kelrath could detect life signs inside. He expanded his observation to Terra itself. The planet was a mess of contradictions. The Terrans, they called themselves humans, had divided their single landmass into competing territories. They still engaged in primitive warfare. Their technology levels varied wildly across different regions. Some areas had barely discovered electricity, while others had built towering cities of steel and glass. Yet somehow, these fractious, barely organized creatures had built a colony on their moon. Kelrath began documenting everything. He watched their primitive rockets launch from Terra's surface, sitting atop columns of fire and fury. Each launch made him wince. The humans were riding controlled explosions into space. The safety margins were terrifyingly small. By Council standards, their success rate of 73% would be grounds for shutting down the entire program. But the humans kept launching. When a rocket failed, they studied the wreckage, made changes, and tried again. When a rocket succeeded, they celebrated briefly, then immediately began planning the next launch. Kelrath watched recordings of the first human lunar landing. The landing craft looked like foil wrapped around a skeleton of metal tubes. The humans inside wore bulky suits that could barely move. When the craft touched down, it had less than 30 seconds of fuel remaining. Any rational species would have called that a near-catastrophic failure and redesigned everything. The humans called it a success and planted a flag. Over the next several rotations, Kelrath compiled his report. He included sensor data, visual recordings, and analysis of human technology. He documented their use of primitive computers that were less powerful than a standard Council datapad. He noted their reliance on chemical propulsion that the Council had abandoned 40,000 years ago. He recorded their habit of fixing critical systems with adhesive strips they called duct tape. The report was extensive, detailed, and thoroughly professional. Kelrath sent it to the Council with a single conclusion. Humans had achieved space colonization not through advanced technology or superior intelligence, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to accept limitations. The Council's response came quickly. Quickly. Observer Kelrath, your report has been reviewed and rejected. The scenario you describe is scientifically impossible. A species cannot reach orbital colonization with the technology level you've documented. We conclude your sensors have been compromised, possibly by local stellar radiation. Return to headquarters for equipment replacement and psychological evaluation. Kelrath stared at the message for a long time. He looked at his instruments, all reading perfectly normal. He looked at the lunar colony, clearly visible on his screens. He looked at Terra below, where humans continued their daily existence, completely unaware that the galaxy considered their greatest achievement impossible. He began recording additional data. If the Council wouldn't believe his official report, he would gather evidence they couldn't ignore. Kelrath had no idea that this decision would change everything. Not just for humanity, but for the entire Galactic Council. On Terra's surface, in a facility called Mission Control, humans were already planning their next impossible achievement. They had no idea they were being watched. They had no idea the galaxy existed beyond their small corner of space. They only knew they wanted to go farther, reach higher, and achieve more. And nothing in the universe was going to stop them. The distress signal cut through space like a scream. Council science vessel Harmonious Discovery had been studying the gas giant the humans called Jupiter when their containment systems failed. In the span of 3 heartbeats, a routine research mission became a death sentence for all 27 crew members aboard. Lead researcher Mivnal watched in horror as his ship's power core began an uncontrolled cascade. Red warning lights painted the bridge in crimson shadows. The translator units struggled to keep up with the multiple species all shouting in their native languages. Containment at 15%, someone called out. 12%. 9%. Mivnal's species didn't feel fear the way others did, but the cold calculation of his approaching death felt close enough. Protocol demanded he send a distress signal, though he knew no help could arrive in time. The nearest Council vessel was 6 rotations away, at maximum speed. He activated the emergency beacon anyway. It was procedure. The Council valued procedure, even when it was pointless. This is Science Vessel Harmonious Discovery, declaring Emergency Condition Omega. Containment failure in progress. All nearby vessels please respond. Aldblen. Daughter 5. I am Crom. The message transmitted on all frequencies, including the primitive radio waves that the pre-contact species in this system used. Not that it mattered. The locals barely had functional spacecraft. They certainly couldn't mount a rescue operation. 6%. The monitoring station called out. Estimate total failure in 9 minutes. Mivnal began composing his final research notes. His discovery about Jupiter's atmospheric layers would die with him, but perhaps the beacon's recording would preserve his data for future researchers. It was a small comfort. Then something impossible happened. Sir, we have a response to our distress call. Mivnal's head appendage swiveled toward the communications officer. Already? That's impossible. The nearest Council ship, It's not a council ship, sir. It's the locals. The humans. Every crew member turned to stare at the communications station. One of the junior researchers made a sound that the translator rendered as hysterical laughter. The primitives? With their explosion-based propulsion? Even if they launched immediately, they couldn't possibly. Sir. They're already here. They must have been conducting operations in the orbital space. They're hailing us now. Mivnal felt like reality had stopped making sense. Put them through. The view screen activated, showing a human female in a bulky orange suit. Her face was visible through a clear helmet, showing the strange flat features and bilateral symmetry of her species. Behind her, Mivnal could see what looked like a spacecraft held together with prayer and optimism. Harmonious discovery. This is Captain Maria Santos, of the United Nations spaceship Indomitable. We received your distress call. What's your situation? Mivnal's translator struggled with the human's language, but the meaning came through clearly enough. Captain Santos, we appreciate your response, but I don't think you understand the severity. Containment failure, right? Your reactor or power core is going critical? The human's face showed an expression Mivnal's database labeled as grim determination. How many people on board? 27. But, and how long until complete failure? 7 minutes. But Captain, your technology cannot possibly. Yeah. We hear that a lot. The human turned her head. Chen, can we match their orbit? Another voice came through, male this time. It's gonna be rough, Captain. Really rough. We might burn out the attitude thrusters. Then we'll fix them later. Do it. Mivnal watched in stunned silence as the human vessel, which looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and held together with optimism, began maneuvering toward harmonious discovery. The movements were rough, inefficient, and used far more fuel than necessary, but they were fast. Containment at 3%, his crew called out. Captain Santos, you need to stay back. When our core fails, the explosion will destroy anything within. Not planning to be here when it blows. The human's face showed teeth, which Mivnal's database unhelpfully labeled as either smile or threat display. We're going to get you out. How many airlocks do you have operational? 2. But our docking systems are not compatible with. We don't need compatible. We need close enough. Chen, bring us alongside. Rodriguez, break out the emergency seal kit. The what? Mivnal asked. Something we invented for situations exactly like this. Okay, Discovery. Listen up. We're going to dock with you. Hard seal or not. Then you're going to get your people into our ship. You've got maybe 5 minutes, so move fast. The human vessel slammed into Harmonious Discovery's hull with a magnetic clamp that made the entire ship shudder. Alarms screamed about hull integrity, adding to the chaos of the failing containment system. Through his external cameras, Mivnal watched 3 humans in bulky suits spacewalk across to Discovery's airlock. They were carrying equipment that looked homemade, welding something to his ship's hull while hanging in vacuum. 2% containment, someone called out. 4 minutes to failure. Discovery, we've got a seal. It won't be pretty, but it'll hold long enough. Mivnal gave the order, his rational mind completely overwhelmed by the insanity of the situation. The humans had created an improvised docking system in under 3 minutes, in open space, while his ship was dying around him. All crew, proceed to airlocks 1 and 2 immediately. Emergency evacuation order. His crew moved with trained efficiency, but Mivnal could see the panic in their movements. They crowded into the airlocks, multiple species trying not to trample each other in their haste to survive. The humans on the other side pulled council crew members through the improvised seal one after another. Captain Santos herself was at the seal, her strong arms pulling crew members to safety without any apparent concern for the radiation that was now flooding Discovery's corridors. Captain, the radiation levels. Mivnal started. Yeah, I know. I'll get checked out later. Keep moving, people. 1% containment. 2 minutes. Mivnal was the last one through the seal. Captain Santos grabbed his thorax and pulled him into the human ship with surprising strength. The moment he was clear, one of her crew members slapped a control, and the improvised seal disconnected with an explosive pop. "Chen, get us out of here. Full burn." The human ship's engines, which shouldn't have been capable of such acceleration according to Council physics, roared to life. Mivnal felt himself pressed against the deck as forces that would have been illegal by Council safety standards pushed the Indomitable away from Discovery. 30 seconds, someone counted. "Not enough," Chen's voice said. "We're still too close. Then give me more speed." "Captain, if I push harder, we'll burn out." "Do it anyway," the engines screamed. Mivnal's species couldn't feel pain the same way humans did, but the sensation of his internal organs shifting under the acceleration came close. Around him, Council crew members were crying out in multiple languages. "Brace!" Captain Santos shouted. Harmonious Discovery exploded. The shockwave hit Indomitable like a physical blow, sending the ship spinning. Alarms shrieked. Something in the engine room made a sound like tearing metal. Then, slowly, the spinning stopped. The alarms quieted. The humans worked their controls with practiced efficiency, bringing their damaged ship back under control. Captain Santos pulled off her helmet. Her face was covered in sweat, and her dark hair stuck to her forehead. She was smiling. "Everyone okay back there?" Mivnal looked around at his crew. They were bruised, terrified, and several species were expressing distress in their unique ways. But they were alive. All 27 of them were alive. "Captain Santos," Mivnal managed to say, "what you just did was completely insane. It violated every safety protocol. Used technology far beyond what your species should possess, and had a probability of success that no rational being would accept." The human smile grew wider. "Yeah, that sounds about right. Welcome to humanity." Mivnal realized then that the galaxy's understanding of what was possible was about to change forever, and it was going to change because humans had never bothered to learn what was impossible in the first place. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to inspire awe. It was a massive sphere where representatives from 847 species gathered to debate the fate of civilizations. The chamber could hold thousands, and today, it was completely full. Everyone wanted to see the humans. Council Examiner Talara floated in her designated space, her crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. She had been chosen to evaluate Terra's petition for council membership because of her reputation for fairness and her 50,000 years of experience with emerging species. She watched as the human delegation entered the chamber. They walked instead of floating, gliding, or phasing like more advanced species. Their bodies were fragile things of flesh and bone, wrapped in formal clothing that looked uncomfortable. They showed no fear despite being surrounded by beings who could destroy their entire planet with a thought. The lead delegate, a human named Ambassador Chen, stepped to the speaker's platform. He was older by human standards, his hair gray, his face marked with lines that Talara's database labeled as experience and stress. "Honored Council," Chen began, his voice amplified through the chamber. "Terra formally requests admission to the Galactic Council as a full member species." The chamber erupted in what Talara's translator rendered as laughter, though it came in forms ranging from sonic vibrations to pheromone releases. The human delegation stood firm, waiting for the noise to subside. Senior Counselor Veshkara's holographic form pulsed with amused patterns. "Ambassador Chen, Terra barely qualifies as space-capable. You have one lunar colony, a handful of primitive space stations, and propulsion systems we abandoned before your planet formed. What could you possibly offer the Council? With respect, Counselor, we saved 27 Council lives when your science vessel failed, using those same primitive systems you find so amusing." The laughter stopped. Talara felt something she hadn't experienced in millennia. Genuine interest. The rescue had been reported throughout Council space. The analysis had been clear. What Captain Santos did should have been impossible. Multiple safety protocols violated, improvised technology that shouldn't have worked, and acceleration forces that should have killed everyone on board. But it had worked, and everyone had survived. The rescue was noted, Veshkara acknowledged, and has created a political debt. However, a single incident does not qualify a species for membership. Talara, you will conduct a full evaluation of Terra. We will reconvene in 30 rotations to review your findings. 27 rotations later, Talara walked through the streets of a human city called Tokyo. She had taken humanoid form for the visit, her crystalline structure compressed into a body that could pass for human at a distance. She wore what humans called sunglasses to hide her eyes, which couldn't quite match human biology. The city was chaos. Millions of humans moved through streets at speeds Talara found alarming. Vehicles navigated roads with mere centimeters of clearance. Buildings reached toward the sky with architectural designs that sacrificed efficiency for aesthetics. Electronic signs screamed information in bright colors, overwhelming her sensors. Yet somehow, it worked. The chaos had an underlying order, like a complex dance performed by millions of participants who had never met, but somehow knew all the steps. Her guide was Dr. Sarah Kim, a human scientist who had volunteered to show Talara around Terra. Sarah was young, enthusiastic, and asked questions constantly. "So your species is really 50,000 years old?" Sarah asked, as they walked through a marketplace. "What was that like?" "Peaceful," Talara said. "We reached technological maturity 30,000 years ago. Since then, our society has been stable." "Stable," Sarah repeated. "Don't you get bored?" The question caught Talara off guard. "Bored? Yeah, you know. The same thing. Day after day. For thousands of years?" Sarah stopped at a food stall and ordered something called takoyaki. She offered one to Talara, who declined. "We humans. We'd go crazy. We need change, challenge, something new." Talara filed that observation away. Over the next rotations, she would hear variations of it constantly. She visited human research facilities where scientists worked on problems that had been solved by council species millennia ago. When she pointed this out, the humans shrugged and said they wanted to solve it themselves. She visited human hospitals where doctors fought diseases that could be cured with basic council medical technology. When she offered to share the knowledge, they thanked her, but said they'd figure it out. She visited a human school where children learned mathematics. The methods were inefficient compared to council teaching, taking years instead of days. But when she observed a class, she saw something unexpected. A child struggled with a problem, worked at it for hours, and finally solved it. The joy on the child's face was intense, primal. Talara realized the humans weren't learning just to gain knowledge. They were learning to overcome challenges. The struggle itself was the point. She attended a human cultural event called a concert. The music was primitive by council standards, produced by vibrating strings and air columns instead of direct neural stimulation. But when the performance ended, Talara found herself moved in ways she couldn't explain. The music spoke of hope, struggle, loss, and triumph. It spoke of the human experience in a way that transcended words. She had experienced council art for 50,000 years. None of it had made her feel this way. On her final rotation of evaluation, Sarah took her to a memorial. It honored humans who had died attempting to reach space. The list was shockingly long, hundreds of names, spanning decades. "You kept trying," Talara said quietly, "even after so many failures." "Of course," Sarah replied. "Giving up wasn't an option." "Why not?" Sarah thought about it for a moment. "Because someone told us it was impossible. And we don't really handle that well." Talara laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in 3,000 years. That evening, Talara met with Ambassador Chen to discuss her findings. They sat in a garden in what humans called New York. surrounded by plants that had been carefully cultivated in the middle of a massive city. "Your evaluation?" Chen asked. "Troubling," Talara admitted. "Terra is violent. Your species has come close to self-destruction multiple times. You have wars, poverty, disease. By council standards, you're a disaster." Chen nodded, unsurprised. But, you're also magnificent." Talara watched a bird land on a branch nearby. "You've eliminated diseases that plagued you for millennia. You've turned deserts into gardens. You've created art that moved me to tears despite 50,000 years of cultural experience. And most importantly, you haven't given up. Notice, the council values stability," Chen said carefully. "We value change. Yes, and that's what terrifies them." Talara turned to face the ambassador. "The council has been selecting for compliance and stability for so long. We've forgotten what unreasonable determination looks like. You humans, you're going to shake everything up. Is that good or bad?" Talara thought about the concert, the struggling student, the memorial to the fallen. She thought about Captain Santos pulling council crew members to safety while radiation poisoned her. She thought about humans fixing critical systems with adhesive tape because proper materials weren't available. "I think it's necessary," she said finally. "The council has been stagnant for longer than I care to admit. We need someone to remind us that impossible is just a word. But they're going to make you prove it. What do you recommend?" "They'll give you a test, something designed to make you fail gracefully, so you'll withdraw your application without losing face. Don't fail." Chen smiled. "We're very good at not failing. Even when we should." Talara filed her report that night. It was extensive, honest, and ended with a recommendation that surprised even her. Conditional membership, pending successful completion of a trial mission. She had no idea what trial the council would choose, but she suspected the humans would find a way to succeed. They were just stubborn enough to make it work. The void expanse was a place where ships went to die. It was a region of space where normal physics seemed to take a vacation. Sensors malfunctioned. Navigation systems failed. Ships that entered rarely came back out. Over the past 3,000 years, the Council had sent 18 expeditions into the expanse to salvage an ancient derelict that sensors said contained technology from a long-dead civilization. All 18 expeditions had failed. This was the test the Council had chosen for humanity. Captain James Park stood on the bridge of the UNSS Endeavour and tried not to show his fear. Around him, his crew of 12 humans worked alongside 15 council members from various species. The council representatives looked like they were attending a funeral, specifically their own. "Captain Park," came the voice of Mission Commander Zixnal, a serpentine being whose species had evolved in high gravity. "I want it on record that this mission violates 47 safety protocols. We should abort before entering the expanse." "Noted, Commander, but we're not aborting." Park studied the view screen, where the expanse stretched before them like a wound in space. "We came here to salvage that derelict. That's what we're going to do." 17 previous attempts. 18, interrupted Lieutenant Sarah Chen from the navigation station. "Don't sell yourself short, Commander. You guys failed 18 times, which is precisely why we should not attempt a 19th. Park understood the commander's fear. The mission brief had been clear about the dangers. Every previous expedition had reported the same problems. Systems failing without explanation. Crew members experiencing hallucinations. Ships losing power at critical moments. 3 expeditions had lost all crew. The rest had barely escaped with their lives. But humans had read those reports and seen something different. They saw patterns, and humans were very good at finding patterns. "Chen, take us in." Slow and steady, the Endeavour crossed into the expanse. Immediately, the warning lights began flashing. Power fluctuated. The view screen showed static. Behind Park, several council members made sounds of distress in their native languages. "Everyone stay calm," Park ordered. "Rodriguez, what's our status?" Engineer Carlos Rodriguez looked up from his station. Main power at 70% and dropping. Backups are kicking in, but they're unstable. It's like something is draining our systems. Not draining, said Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the science station. She was the youngest crew member, barely 30 years old, but she had a PhD in theoretical physics and a mind that never stopped working. More like testing. The power fluctuations follow a pattern. Pattern? Zixnal slithered closer. What pattern? We've studied this phenomenon for 3,000 years and found no pattern. Maybe you were looking too hard. Yuki pulled up her data on the main screen. See? The power drops, then stabilizes, then drops again. It's like something is poking at our systems, seeing how we respond. Park felt a cold suspicion forming in his mind. Like a test. Exactly like a test. One of the council members, a floating gas being named Forval, pulsed with agitated colors. Tests require a tester. There is nothing alive in the expanse. Nothing alive now, Park agreed. But that derelict had to be built by someone. Chen, can you navigate using manual calculations? In this mess, Captain, the sensors are basically useless. So, don't use sensors. Use math. Plot a course to the derelict's last known position using dead reckoning. The council members erupted in protests. Dead reckoning was ancient, primitive, unreliable. Modern navigation required sensors, computers, real-time adjustments. Chen grinned. Dead reckoning. I love it. Give me 10 minutes. While Chen worked, the power continued to fluctuate. The ship's lights dimmed and brightened in irregular patterns. Some of the council crew started to panic, talking about turning back, about safety protocols, about the 18 previous failures. The human crew stayed focused on their tasks. Course plotted, Chen announced. But Captain, I can't guarantee accuracy. There are too many variables. Best guess is better than no guess. Take us in. The Endeavor moved deeper into the expanse. The derelict appeared on their screens. A massive structure that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Its design followed no known architectural principles. It was beautiful and disturbing in equal measure. Approaching the derelict, Chen reported. But Captain, we've got another problem. Docking systems are offline. Of course they are. Park looked at Rodriguez. Can you rig something? You mean like Captain Santos did during the rescue? Exactly like that. Rodriguez's face split into a wide smile. Give me 20 minutes and all the duct tape we've got. While Rodriguez worked on an improvised docking system, Yuki continued studying the derelict. Her screen filled with data that made less sense the more she analyzed it. Captain, I think I understand what happened to the previous expeditions. Tell me. They tried to solve the problem with technology. Better sensors. More powerful systems. Advanced navigation. But the Expanse doesn't care about technology. It cares about creativity. Axine. Zixnal's translator rendered his confusion clearly. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, Yuki countered. Think about it. Who builds a ship in a region of space that destroys technology? Someone who wants to test visitors. Not their tools. The derelict isn't damaged. It's a puzzle. Park felt pieces clicking together in his mind. A puzzle for species, creative enough to solve it, and stubborn enough to keep trying, Yuki added. Docking system ready, Rodriguez called out. It's not pretty, but it'll work. 2, 3. Docking system ready. Docking system ready. 2, 3. Nothing we build is pretty, Park said, but it works. Take us in, Chen. The Endeavor latched onto the derelict with magnetic clamps and Rodriguez's improvised airlock. The moment the connection was secure, something changed. The power fluctuations stopped. The sensors cleared. The entire ship stabilized. What just happened? Zixnal demanded. We passed the test, Park said quietly. The away team consisted of Park, Yuki, Rodriguez, and 3 council members, including Zixnal. They entered the derelict through the improvised airlock, finding corridors that were both ancient and pristine. No dust, Rodriguez observed. This thing is thousands of years old. There should be dust. Or it's been waiting, Yuki said. Waiting for someone to pass the test. They moved through the derelict, following corridors that seemed to lead them deeper inside. The walls glowed with soft light that had no apparent source. Symbols covered every surface, written in a language no one could read. Then they found the central chamber. It was a sphere filled with floating crystals, each one pulsing with light. In the center of the sphere hung a single, larger crystal. And somehow, Park knew it was calling to them. Don't touch anything, Zeksnal warned. We should scan first, analyze, follow proper procedure. Park walked forward and touched the crystal. Light flooded his mind. Information poured in. Not as words or images, but as pure understanding. The derelict wasn't a ship. It was a gift, left behind by a species that had transcended physical form, meant for any civilization creative enough to find it. The previous expeditions had failed because they approached it as a problem to solve with technology. But the derelict responded to something else. Imagination. Creativity. The willingness to try the impossible. It responded to humanity. When Park opened his eyes, he was smiling. We just inherited a fortune in advanced technology. All we had to do was be crazy enough to try. Zeksnal stared at him. How did you know to touch the crystal? I didn't know. I guessed. Park looked at the serpentine being. Sometimes, Commander, you have to take a leap of faith. That's completely irrational. Yeah, Rodriguez agreed cheerfully. That's kind of our thing. They returned to the Endeavor with data crystals full of information that would take decades to fully understand. Technology that the Council had been trying to recover for 3,000 years, now in human hands because they'd been willing to try something different. As the ship left the expanse, the power systems stable and the navigation clear, Park stood on the bridge and watched the stars. Behind him, the Council members were already arguing about protocols and procedures for studying the recovered technology. The human crew was already planning how to use it. Chen looked up from her station. Captain? We just did the impossible. Again. Get used to it, Lieutenant. I have a feeling that's going to be our specialty. On the Council station, word of the successful mission was spreading. Terra had passed the test that had defeated every other species for 3,000 years. They'd done it with improvised equipment, dead reckoning navigation, and what humans called gut instinct. The cosmos was beginning to realize that humanity played by different rules. And those rules were going to change everything. 6 months after Terra joined the Galactic Council, Observer Kelrath wished he had never sent that first report about the humans. He sat in his new office. He'd been promoted to Humanity Liaison, which sounded impressive until you realized it meant dealing with humans every single day, and reviewed the morning's incident reports. Incident Report 247. Human engineers volunteered for rescue operation in the Korvax Nebula, a region considered too dangerous for any species. They succeeded. Korvax government is now demanding to know why Council regulations said rescue was impossible. Incident Report 248. Human scientists proposed research into dark matter manipulation, a field the Council banned 3,000 years ago as too dangerous. They want to know why it's banned, and if the ban is really necessary or just a suggestion. Incident Report 249. Human philosopher published paper questioning why Council laws haven't changed in 50,000 years. Paper is causing riots on 17 different worlds. Kelrath's thorax ached. He had 4 meetings scheduled today, all with humans. All about things humans wanted to do that violated Council regulations. The first meeting was with Captain Maria Santos. She'd recovered from the radiation exposure during the rescue, though human doctors said she'd probably taken 10 years off her life. She didn't seem to care. Captain Santos, I've reviewed your proposal. Kelrath tried to sound diplomatic. You want to establish a search and rescue operation For ships in distress. Throughout council space. That's right. Santos sat across from him, looking far too energetic for someone who'd nearly died 6 months ago. We've noticed that council protocols say rescue operations are only attempted if success probability is above 70%. That seems low. It's based on risk assessment and resource management. It means you're leaving people to die. The bluntness was very human. Kelrath had learned that humans said what they thought, often without the elaborate courtesy protocols other species used. Captain, the regulations exist for good reason. Attempting rescues with low success probability often results in losing both the original crew and the rescuers. Often. Not always. Santos leaned forward. Look, I get it. You guys play the odds. But sometimes, you have to try anyway. Because it's the right thing to do. The right thing. Kelrath repeated. Humans talked about this concept constantly. It wasn't about logic or efficiency. It was about something they called morality, which seemed to override all practical considerations. Plus, Santos added with a grin, we're really good at succeeding when we shouldn't. You've seen our record. Kelrath had indeed seen their record. In 6 months, human crews had completed 12 impossible rescues, solved 3 engineering problems that had stumped council scientists for centuries, and generally caused chaos wherever they went. I'll submit your proposal to the council, Kelrath said, knowing it would be rejected, and knowing the humans would probably do it anyway. His second meeting was with Dr. Yuki Tanaka and a group of human scientists. They wanted to propose new research initiatives. We want to study the technology from the derelict, Yuki explained. Full analysis, practical applications, the works. That technology is extremely advanced. It could take millennia to fully understand, or it could take 20 years if we really focus on it. Yuki pulled up holographic data. See, we've already figured out the basics of their power generation system. It's based on principles your species abandoned as too difficult to implement. But we think we can make it work. Too difficult means it's not practical. Too difficult means you gave up. One of the other scientists, a man named Dr. Okafor, spoke up. No offense, but your species seems to do that a lot. Something's hard, so you find an easier way. We humans, we kind of enjoy the hard stuff. Kelrath wanted to argue, but he'd seen too much evidence supporting the statement. The council had optimized for efficiency over thousands of years. Humans optimized for challenge. His third meeting was with Ambassador Chen and Talara. The crystalline being had become something of an advocate for humanity on the council, which had surprised everyone, possibly including herself. The council is concerned, Talara said without preamble. Terra has been a member for 6 months, and you've already caused more disruption than most species cause in 6,000 years. Is that a complaint? Chen asked. It's an observation. Talara's crystalline form shifted colors. You're asking questions we stopped asking millennia ago. Why do we accept limitations? Why don't we try harder? You're making people uncomfortable. Why do we accept? You're good, Chen said. Comfort breeds complacency. Kelrath watched the exchange with fascination. 6 months ago, such a statement to a council examiner would have been unthinkable. Now, Talara just laughed. You're also inspiring people. Talara continued. Young species are watching what you do. Some council species are asking why they can't volunteer for dangerous missions or propose radical research like humans do. You're changing the culture. Again I ask, is that a complaint? No. Talara's colors shifted to what Kelrath's translator labeled as thoughtful. I think it's exactly what we needed. But change is difficult, especially for species that have been stable for thousands of years. There will be resistance. We're used to resistance, Chen said. We've been resisting gravity, limitations, and common sense since we learned to walk upright. We'll manage. The day continued with more meetings, more proposals, more humans wanting to do impossible things. By evening, Kelrath was exhausted. He decided to visit the human section of the station, an area that had been set up to accommodate Terra's delegation. The human section was chaos compared to the rest of the station. Music played from multiple locations, mixing into a cacophony that somehow worked. Humans gathered in groups, talking, laughing, arguing. They decorated the sterile walls with art paintings, photographs, even what they called graffiti. They'd added plants in pots, bringing organic life to a space designed for pure functionality. It was messy, inefficient, and completely against station regulations. It was also alive in a way the rest of the station hadn't been for thousands of years. Kelrath found Captain Santos in what humans called a bar, drinking something called whiskey with several other humans and a few brave council members who'd decided to socialize. "Observer Kelrath," Santos called out. "Come, join us. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" "Johnson here just got approval for a mission to map the vortex currents." Everyone said it was too dangerous, but she convinced them anyway. A young human woman raised her glass. "They said it couldn't be done safely." I said, "Watch me." The other humans laughed and cheered. One of the council members, a cautious species that normally avoided all risk, was cheering along with them. Kelrath accepted a glass of something that smelled terrible and probably violated several health regulations. But when Santos raised her glass for a toast, he raised his as well. "To doing the impossible," Santos declared. "To being crazy enough to try," another human added. "To humanity." Talara's voice came from behind Kelrath. The crystalline being had materialized in the bar, her form glowing softly. "Who taught the galaxy that impossible is just a word?" They drank, and Kelrath felt the liquid burn down his throat. It was awful. But somehow, in this moment, surrounded by humans and their infectious enthusiasm, it felt right. Later that evening, Kelrath stood on the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. A human joined him, Lieutenant Chen, from the Endeavor. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "Yes. Though I've seen these stars for 43 cycles. You've only known about them for a few years." "Parting, that's what makes them beautiful to us. They're new, full of possibilities, places we haven't been yet." Chen smiled. "Your species has explored most of the galaxy. You know what's out there. Doesn't that frighten you? The unknown terrifies us. That's why we have to explore it." Kelrath thought about that. The Council had spent thousands of years eliminating unknowns, cataloging everything, making the galaxy safe and predictable. Humanity was about to undo all that careful organization. And maybe, Kelrath thought, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. "Lieutenant Chen, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why do humans keep trying even when logic says you should stop?" Chen thought about it for a moment. "Because giving up means accepting that something is impossible. And if we accept that, we stop growing. We stop learning. We stop being us." She turned to look at him. "Your species is thousands of years old. You've achieved stability. But maybe you've also achieved stagnation. Way back in 10, and you think humanity can change that? I think we're already changing it. Look around, observer. Council species are starting to ask questions again, starting to wonder what they might achieve if they tried harder. We didn't bring you advanced technology or ancient wisdom. We brought something better. What's that? We brought hope. The belief that things can be better, if you're willing to work for it." Across the station, in a council chamber, a vote was taking place. The human proposal for a search and rescue operation was being debated. By traditional standards, it should have been rejected easily. It passed by a narrow margin. In a research facility on the edge of council space, scientists from 3 different species were working together on dark matter research. inspired by human proposals to question old prohibitions. On 7 different worlds, young beings of various species were looking at the stars and thinking maybe, just maybe, they could do more than their societies expected of them. The cosmos had caught Terra off guard when they first made contact. Terra was supposed to be primitive, limited, thousands of years away from spaceflight, but Terra had caught the cosmos off guard right back. Because humanity didn't care what was supposed to be possible. They only cared about what they could make possible. Observer Kelrath watched the stars and thought about the future. It was going to be chaotic. Humans would keep pushing boundaries, breaking rules, and doing impossible things. The council would adapt, slowly and with much complaining, but they would adapt. Because humanity had reminded them of something they'd forgotten. Over thousands of years of stability. The universe didn't care about your limitations. It only cared about what you were brave enough to attempt. And humanity was very, very brave. In her quarters, Captain Maria Santos was already planning her next impossible mission. The Korvax Nebula had been declared safe. That was boring. She needed something more challenging. The Abyss sector was supposedly completely impassable. No ship had ever traversed it successfully. Santos smiled as she began drafting a proposal. Someone needed to be the first. And humanity was very good at being first.